The CrossFit Games have titled the fittest man on earth every year for the last 18 years. After a 6-month qualification process, 40 men meet at the CrossFit Games to compete for the title. This year, on the first day of the CrossFit Games, Lazar Jukic drowned during the first workout of the weekend. After lots of processing of emotions, conversations, and a slew of other difficult moments, CrossFit eventually decided to continue with the competition starting the very next day. Throughout the weekend that followed, James Sprague excelled in the rest of the competition and was eventually crowned the fittest man on earth on Sunday. But is he really? James Sprague is not new to the CrossFit scene. His CrossFit journey began shortly after watching his father participate as a CrossFit Games Masters athlete in 2016. James competed as a teenager at the Games twice, taking 4th as a 15-year-old in 2017 and 5th as a 17-year-old in 2019. From there, Sprague only took a few short years to make his way into the elite of the men's division. In 2021, he took a 22nd at the West Coast Classic. The following year, he improved on that and finished 6th place at the Syndicate Crown semifinal, just missing out on a spot to the Games by 1 point after a historic comeback from Will Morad on the final event. In 2023, he made his first qualification to the CrossFit Games as an elite individual and finished his rookie year in 25th place. This year, in 2024, Sprague had a very impressive performance at the North America West semifinal, taking 3rd place, beating out perennial Games athletes like Patrick Vellner and Samuel Quant. After such a good showing at the North America West semifinal, Sprague was expected to build on his rookie season and have an even better year at the Games in 2024. However, no one really thought he had a chance to win it. In fact, on the Heat 1 app, which is a fantasy CrossFit app where you can make your picks for top 10 standings in competitions, out of over 3,500 people that played, not a single one picked him to win the CrossFit Games. Not even himself. Now, before we get into the discussion of whether he truly deserves the title of fittest man on earth, we need to remember what it is that CrossFit defines as the fittest and what the test was supposed to look like before the alternative plans were introduced after Thursday morning. CrossFit defines the fittest as the person with the greatest work capacity across broad time and modal domains. So the CrossFit Games are supposed to test your work capacity across broad time and modal domains. But the problem is that this may not be what happened this year. So following that, let's talk about the actual physical domains that were tested and the actual programming of the event and whether or not the athletes that did stick around were actually even tested in broad times and modal domains. Since Rich Froning first won the CrossFit Games 14 years ago in 2010, we have had 5 male champions with an average height of 5'9", with the tallest being Ben Smith in 2015 at 5'11". James Sprague is 6'2". In fact, the top 4 athletes at the CrossFit Games this year were all over 6 feet tall. Personally, I don't like looking at workouts under the good for short people, good for tall people lens, and programming should never be done with the hopes of a certain height outcome. I think that if you vary the domains of programming, like movements, environment, time domains, movement combinations, enough, the fittest will win regardless of height. However, it is evident that this year the taller athletes seem to do very well with the programming that was given. Again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's also not necessarily a sign that the programming was biased either. So let's take a look at it. The first and most obvious issue with the programming this year is the number of events. With only 10, this was the least amount of events at the CrossFit Games since 2010. With so few, there was a huge lack of things that were tested overall compared to other years. Secondly, there were 2 events that were supposed to happen that just didn't. These are a redo of Amanda 4.5 and an interesting workout with sledgehammer hits and tire flips. Can you really just remove 2 events and the programming still be complete? But to be fair, the programming did still have a good mix of times and domains. There were 3 events with squatting, there was horizontal and vertical upper body pulling, horizontal and vertical upper body pressing, a single leg movement with the step-ups, trunk flexion, lower body hinging, high skill gymnastics, sprints, max lifts, metcons, and long endurance workouts. There was no real odd object test. At the Games, there is usually 1 or 2. There was no kettlebells, no rings, no rower, no powerlifting or raw strength test. But when I initially looked at it, I actually did think that this ended up being fairly well-rounded programming. If this was a competition where you would expect there to be 10 events, like Rogue Invitational or Wadapalooza, I don't think there would be much to complain about in terms of well-roundedness. But this is the CrossFit Games, the pinnacle of the sport. And as I looked a little deeper at the programming, I realized it's actually pretty bad. Let me explain. Throughout the years, there have been events that almost perfectly predicted the final outcome of the CrossFit Games. For example, in the workout Triangle Couplet from the 2015 Games, the top 10 in this workout was the exact same as the overall top 10 at the end of the weekend. Out of 40 athletes, this one workout got the right top 10 and almost ordered them perfectly. Prediction score is a stat I came up with to quantify how well a single event predicted the overall top 10 outcome for its respective year. And it's a little complicated, but all you need to know is that it gives us one single number that shows how well an event predicted the overall outcome for its year. Throughout all the years, as expected, the best predicting event has been a well-rounded workout between 3 and 18 minutes long, usually containing a mix of gymnastics and weightlifting. Because the final outcome of the games is usually well-rounded programming, this best predicting event is usually well-rounded also. This graph shows the event with the top prediction score from each year since 2010. The x-axis is the year that the event happened, and the y-axis is the duration of the event in minutes. In 2015, the best predicting event was Triangle Couplet, around 6 minutes long. In 2023, it was the workout Helena at around 8 minutes, and most of the best predictors have fallen within this range. But in 2024, the workout that best predicted the overall outcome of the top 10 is here. 45 minutes long. The one workout that best predicted the outcome of the 2024 CrossFit Games is 1,000 box step-ups for time. It's absolutely obnoxious. The only year in the CrossFit Games history where the best predicting event was over 20 minutes. And it wasn't 25 or 30 or 35 or 40. 45 minutes long. And it wasn't muscle-ups, thrusters, snatches, or rope climbs. It was none of that. It was 45 minutes of stepping onto a box. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong with this year's programming, but if the best predicting event for a competition is 45-minute long 1,000 box step-ups for time, your event has some bias. In fact, this is the overall top 10 for the 2024 CrossFit Games, and here is what they took on the workout Chad. Pretty dang accurate in placing the field out of 32 athletes. I'm sorry to say, but the event with the best prediction score has never looked anything like this before, and will never look anything like this again. But let's assume for a moment that the programming at the games this year was sufficient to find the fittest on Earth. Even if this were the case, the CrossFit Games this year were still vastly different from the years past in terms of environment and overall test. Following the tragic event in the first workout, the reigning champion Jeff Adler dropped out of the competition completely. A competition that doesn't include the reigning champion who trained all year and had every intention to win again feels incomplete. In the following events to come, a few more very good athletes dropped out of the competition as well, including notable guys like Samuel Cornoyer, Guy Medeiros, and Moritz Feibig. On top of multiple athletes formally withdrawing from the competition, there were a plethora of other athletes that were noticeably performing at a lower level than usual due to the emotional distress that many were feeling throughout the weekend. And this is where I have been hearing a majority of the argument in favor of James Sprague being the fittest man on Earth this year. He had mental fortitude and emotional resilience that drove him to win under terrible circumstances. Things we have seen from former champions like Matt Fraser and Rich Froning. These all-time greats also fought through hardships, injuries, and had comebacks. They used the power of their mind and desire to compete to simply get it done. But this argument is strongly misguided. Yes, James Sprague won the competition, but these were not normal circumstances, and an ability to stay mentally engaged during an event like this does not make you the fittest on Earth. Under these circumstances, it's not about a championship mindset. It's not fighting through a nagging injury, it's not dealing with the ups and downs of competing, and it's not an ability to go hard in a workout. A fellow competitor died on the first day of competition. Usually, I would completely agree that there's a strong mental component to competing and excelling at the CrossFit Games. But again, these are not normal circumstances. The CrossFit Games are not a win at whatever cost type of war. If they were, maybe some other athletes would have locked in and pushed themselves for better scores. But remember, this is sport, not war. There are a million scenarios that could vastly change the outcome of the games, and James Sprague is the fittest on Earth because he excelled under these very specific circumstances. Heck, maybe I would even accept that argument if everyone was under the same emotional distress. But some of these guys barely knew Lazar, while others were extremely close and spent a lot of time with him. Multiple athletes have talked about how when they would get into the difficult part of a workout, they would question why they were doing this. They would think about their friend Lazar, and they would think about the meaninglessness of this event that they were participating in.
And was questioning everything. Just throughout that event, I just remember trying to think and process about all the things going on. Why am I out here? Am I doing the right thing? I couldn't think about the workouts. I was so checked out.
In a normal year, these things would not be going through their head. Remember, when CrossFit says modal domains, we are talking about physical domains, like lifting, running, pressing, pulling, etc., not emotional domains. James Sprague is the CrossFit Games champion. He won the events that were given, but for the first time in over a decade, the CrossFit Games champion and the fittest on Earth are not the same person.